Now next heading is steps taken by Government of India to counter the problem of NPA. The steps taken by government to counter NPA. This was the first step taken by this government, incumbent government. In 2014, when this government came to the power, they announced the recapitalization package of 70,000 crore for next 4 years. This division of 70,000 crore is like this. 25,000 each for first 2 years and 10,000 for subsequent 2 years. So write like this. We'll write in a summarized form about recapitalization. First you write this. Mission Indradhanush, it was the part of Mission Indradhanush. We have two types of Mission Indradhanush. One related to banking and another vaccination. So don't get confused. So only one part of that mission is still applicable. This is this. Recapitalization. Recap. Okay, so now we are in a current fiscal of this 10,000 of recapitalization. Not very important, but just to tell you the trend that government is time to time recapitalizing the public sector banks. Okay. If in preliminary they will ask that what's the trend of recapitalization, yeah, they will ask like a statement like the process of recapitalization has been increasing from last decade, since last decade, like this. They can ask anything. They can ask trend. That government has been recapitalizing public sector banks since 2008 after subprime crisis. So statement will be correct. Okay. Now in November 2017, government announced a recapitalization package for public sector banks. This recapitalization package is of 2.11 lakh crores. The division is as follows: 1.35 lakh crore will belong to recapitalization bonds. It means government will issue recapitalization bonds. 58,000 crores of money banks will raise from the market, and 18,000 crore will be from budgetary support. So 1.3 lakh government will sell recapitalization bonds in the market. We'll discuss what is bonds, debenture, shares in this class itself, because after that the topic is of financial market. That's a very short topic. It will take around 2.5 hours. So maybe the remaining time of today's class and maybe 1 hour of tomorrow's class. We'll finish the discussion of money market and capital market. Recapitalization bonds, 58,000 crore banks will raise from market, and 18,000 crore will raise from budget. Remember, there's one person took away 11,000 crore rupees. So that one person, it means this 18,000 crore is a burden on taxpayer. This is not the burden of taxpayer. If government announced 2.11 lakh crore of budgetary support, then what happened? The whole amount is a burden on taxpayers' money. But here, only 18,000 crore. Only 18,000 crore. Check it. So you write like this only so that you will remember. Any doubt regarding this? Recapitalization bonds. This will, it means raise from share markets. Okay, and this is bonds will sell in the market, open market operations. These are shares, simple, stakeholders. If you are purchasing in this amount, this category, you will stake, you will get some kind of stake in bank. Bonds are just borrowing, loans. Are you putting in what difference between equity and bonds? Okay, done. Now we'll write a paragraph. We write this about this. Okay? So the recapitalization package, announced by government of India, in 2017, announced by government of India in 2017, in order to revive the public sector banks, from the problem of non-performing assets, full stop. Previous to this, government already infused 70,000 crore. Government already infused 70,000 crore of funds into public sector banks. 70,000 crore of funds into public sector banks. Full stop. The problem of NPA is not only from the side of capitalization, but it is also the result of poor working administration due to adoption of inefficient practices, as well as outside interference in the working of PSBs. Full stop.
So yesterday, there was an interview of Canada MD, and so the same question was asked: why was the NPS raised so much in the past 2 years? So he said there is one sector that is raising infrastructure, and he said the most important profit is in this infrastructure sector. The gestation period is around 15 to 20 years, but when the loans were given, the period that was set was 5 to 10 years. So he said as the gestation period was over and the period was done. So now that's why the lenders are facing a problem of haircuts and other issues. So should we also include this also, like it's to be efficient like we are also doing administration in efficient proper appraisal and other things. But it's going to also
That is also related to poor appraisal. This point is also related to poor appraisal. You should appraise first. It means cost benefit analysis. There are n number of models in economics. When you apply econometrics, that is for future prospect, future analysis. In econometrics, that like economics is all about three things: theory, graphical representation, and mathematical representation. In graphical representation, only you have two variables because there's a limit of graph. But in econometrics, you can take n number of variables. There's no limit. So there are n number of econometrics models that you can use, that bank can use in analyzing a particular project. If they are not taking several factors, like if they are ignoring an important factor, then obviously your appraisal will go wrong. So this will also relate to inefficiency in the working, in the broader sense. Because we have said that there is inefficiency in the working of inside, it means inside, and outside means the pressure from political parties. But we cannot write this in examination. So we'll write excessive pressure the working on the working of public sector banks from outside. So whenever you are incorporating any outside X factor, that's what we call exogenous factor, that affect from outside. Obviously, only one thing, that is government interference in forwarding of loans. Or please do not read interviews. Let me tell you why. Because interviews are the personal opinion. Getting my point? They were just personal opinion. If you see the recommendation of PJ Nayak committee, you will see some kind of biasness. In the biasness against PSB, against government ownership, because the PJ Nayak, the person, belongs to Axis Bank. Getting my point? That is why the interviews are not very fruitful in getting enough content. Because if you read interview, these are personal opinions. If you read the interview of Arvind Subramaniam, etc., they will speak in favor of government, obviously. If you read the interview of Raghuram Rajan, now he will say in a neutral sense. Getting my point? So interviews may be biased. Read editorials and take points from there. अगर read कर रहे हैं तो problem नहीं है, but मेरा जो purpose है बताने का, that I am telling you. Because interview are the personal opinion. You can take content, but you should analyze that content. Analyze from both sides. Getting my point? सोचिए देखो ऐसा बोला तो क्यों बोला? And if he is saying, then what may be the repercussion? What is the opposite thing? Getting my point? So think from both sides. If you are reading interview, but इतना time होता नहीं है और इतना research आपको करना पड़ेगा. Getting my point? Infrastructure sector, if I'll counter this particular point, it means infrastructure, you said that infrastructure gestation period is around 15 to 20 years. And what about 5-10 years? What you said?
So actually he said that the loans that were given, the period it was set to get the loans that was 5 to 10 years.
Maturity of the loan set was around 10 years, we can say.
Only the problem was there. If they have already thought that it will take 20 years and they said that period, so then there should be no number of NPAs that we are facing right now. They would not be their words, and the banks would be in a better position as compared to what we are facing right now. So he said that also.
Obviously, suppose the loan was given for 10 years only and the gestation period is of 20 years. Obviously, gestation period means by this 20-year period, you will not earn any profit. So companies are not able to pay back the full money. Then you will restructure that particular loan. Obviously, this belongs to poor project appraisal. Now I will counter this point. If you are borrowing for 10 years, because company is also knowing, also aware that this may take 20 years. This will not end in 10 years. So they can use other mediums, like issue bonds, issue debentures, other mediums. Like you remember I've dictated that there must be the requirement of vibrant corporate bond market in India. This is the most important point because this is not present in India. If it is present, it is not developed because people are not trusting that particular market. If you are having vibrant corporate bond market, it means you can borrow from public. You will issue bonds to the corporates or to any individual in the open market. Then you can raise fund. And whenever you are borrowing from the bond market, there is an obligation from the company's side to repay that amount. And bonds are issued only for 5 years, 10 years, depending on the nature of the bond. But if you are taking loan, because deposits are short term, you cannot imagine fixed deposit for 7 years. No. आपके में किसी के सुना नहीं होगा that fixed deposit for 7 years. Maximum 5 years you heard about in a rare case. Otherwise 1 year, 2 year. Deposits are short term, loans are long term. So there must be a mismatch, that's for sure. And for that mismatch, this is the provision. But the problem of NPA is not this. लिखा है ना मैंने, capitalize. अगली line में लिखाने वाला था. लिखो चलो. If you recapitalize, if government keep on recapitalizing, if government keep on recapitalizing, if government keep on recapitalizing public sector banks time and again, without accompanying with any structural changes in the working of banks, without any structural changes in the working of banks, then the problem will resurface again. Then the problem will resurface again. You will not find this point in any newspaper, because when I was talking to Vivek Debroy around 4 months back, the chairman of Chief Economic Advisory Council to Prime Minister, he was saying that if you are keep on recapitalizing public sector banks, the problem will resurface again. Obviously, I asked that why government is keep on recapitalizing public sector banks. When you just announced the recapitalization package in 2014 under Mission Indradhanush of 70,000 crore. And can you imagine the size of NPA? It is 9.6 lakh crore. So 70,000 crore is nothing. Getting my point? Now that government announced 2.11 lakh crore. So I asked what was the reason behind the announcement of this recapitalization package. So he was not able to answer. Why? I don't know. Or willingly he was not answering my question. Maybe because I cannot say that he does not know. But willingly. But according to me and according to many other policymakers, when I was in December, I visited Guntur. There was a conference of Indian Economic Association, where 5,000 leading economists of our country meet together every year, the last 3 days and 4 days of December. So at that time, I was also discussing recapitalization, because November 2017, you can imagine, that was a hot debatable topic. Now the main conclusion for announcing this recapitalization package to encounter the problem of twin balance sheet. So we'll write in the next line, then I'll explain. This recapitalization package announced under compulsion. This recapitalization package was announced under compulsion. Was announced under compulsion to counter the problem of twin balance sheet, from supply side factors. First off, now understand this twin balance sheet problem. The problem of stressed balance sheet of banks and corporates twin balance sheet problem of banks and corporates. It means banks are giving loan to the corporates. If corporates are struggling for the problem of repayment, it means banks will also struggle with the problem of non-performing asset. Corporates are struggling due to low demand and low efficiency in their working. Banks are struggling because of poor project appraisal by forwarding loans to this. It means there is a mismatch. Now what is the solution to this problem? Either you expedite the stalled projects. There are 343 infrastructure projects, yesterday we have written, and under banks 9.6 lakh crores of NPA. Which is the faster step to counter the problem of twin balance sheet? Obviously, to recapitalize public sector banks, because to expedite the process of infrastructure, completion of the project of infrastructure, it will take 5 years. If you are expediting as fast as possible, but it will take 5 years, minimum 5 years. So what's the solution? Recapitalization of banks. So we are just delaying the process, delaying the disaster, we can say, disaster in bank. What is the ultimate solution? I told you ultimate solution is simple. Do not interfere in the working of banks, first of all. Banks should work on an independent basis. You remember the discussion of MPC. Previously to MPC, RBI was working independently. And if you see the discussion 4 or 5 years back, there was a topic of autonomy of Reserve Bank of India. Whenever you are giving some task to a particular body, you should give certain autonomy. If you are giving the task of controlling inflation to Reserve Bank of India, you should give enough autonomy. But with the adoption of this particular committee, MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, you are diluting some kind of autonomy because there are 3 nominees from government side. So obviously, that's the same thing. The solution, long-term solution is expedite the process of project clearances. You remember the genesis of NPA. There were a problem of delays in the clearances. So you should provide a single window clearances so that you will make an improvement in ease of doing business. We are still at 100. If we see the total countries, these are 188 or 189 countries. Previous rank was 130. Although the improvement is huge, but still a long way to go. So expedite the process of project clearances as well as loan. Here, working autonomy for the banks. It means there must be an independent evaluation of the project. You cannot force the banks. So koi matlab nahi hoga, otherwise problem will resurface again. Again the NP amount will go up, you will recapitalize and just cool down that for a temporary period. Again, if you are not taking any corrective measures, it will also again go up. So problem will resurface again. Ultimate solution is structural changes. If you remember the discussion of planning before economic reforms, we were studying that Indian economy was running not on a sustainable path. In 80s, what happened? High fiscal deficit, high current account deficit, debt piled up. There was a deficit on the balance of payment. Why? Because of the long gestation period of the projects under Mahalanobis model, that is second 5-year plan or second industrial policy resolution of 1956. So there was a problem. Problem will resurface again. And what will happen in 1990? There was an outburst, and out of compulsion, you have to adopt certain policies of economic reforms. So here, maybe time will come when government had to privatize these public sector banks. Maybe this is the possible solution. Government will keep 4 or 5 banks as a public sector bank. Other banks you have to privatize. This is the solution. And you make some merger of 2 to 3 banks or 1 or 2 banks by making big banks so that they can absorb losses. But ultimately, this is the loss to the taxpayers' money and loss to the resources of nation. So there is another fugitive economic offenders bill. This is also working in this direction so that government is not capitalized or will not be able to capitalize in future. They will find some other solution. So these are the solution from supply side, because banks are the supplier of loans. But what about the demand side? Now demand is low about loan. So if demand is low and you are not getting proper rate of return on the previous assets, obviously there will be a mismatch. But if the problem goes worse and worse in future, that is why you have to recapitalize. I am one of the biggest criticizer of this recapitalization package, but this is out of compulsion. So I'm not blaming anyone, but the main culprit is the policies taken in the previous 10 years. So whenever you will experience any economic expansion, policy makers should be very, very careful because rainy days will come. Getting my point? ठीक है. What was the last sentence? Problem will resurface again. This was the last sentence.
This recapitalization technique was announced under the compulsion to conquer the problem in the nation.
You write one more line. The reforms under banking sector is the first and the foremost requirement to counter the problem of NPA multidimensionally.